Imagine sitting down to a game of chess, right? And your opponent's very first move is to just deliberately sweep half of their own pieces completely off the board.
Right, you'd think they lost their mind. Or, maybe just tripped and bumped the table.
Exactly. But what if that incredibly destructive act wasn't an accident at all? What if it was like the opening move of this highly calculated psychological trap?
I mean, it completely upends how we're taught to approach literally any challenge, whether it's chess or a video game or even corporate strategy. The universally accepted logic is always about accumulation.
Yeah, you gather resources, you build up your fortress.
Right. You establish this solid, impenetrable position, and you just try to gain these little incremental advantages over your opponent until you finally tip the scales.
Well, today, we are opening up the blueprints of someone who just actively rejects every single piece of that conventional wisdom. We're doing a deep dive into a very specific, honestly incredibly fascinating document, simply titled TommyYugioh
It's quite a title.
Right. And look, if you have never played a trading card game, or if you have absolutely no idea what a Yu-Gi-Oh card even looks like, stick around. You really, really need to hear this.
Yeah, because we aren't just looking at a list of cardboard playing cards today. We are basically dissecting a profound psychological profile.
Totally.
This document outlines the strategy of a player named Tommy, and his whole approach to problem solving, to risk-taking, and information gathering is just an absolute masterclass in unconventional thinking.
It's like looking at the blueprints of a mad scientist. Tommy's entire gameplay philosophy centers around chaos, relentless experimentation, and literally breaking things just to understand how they work.
He definitely doesn't want to build a fortress. He wants to build a laboratory, run a highly volatile experiment, and just see what survives the blast.
Yeah, and to really understand this mindset, we have to start by looking at the core engines of his deck. These are cards known as the jars, and they perfectly embody his philosophy of breaking things to generate insight. So let's start with the first one, which is called Morphing Jar.
The mechanism of Morphing Jar is just brilliantly disruptive. When this card is activated, both players are forced to discard their entire hands.
Wait, their entire hands?
Their entire hands. Every single card they're holding goes straight into the graveyard. Then both players draw 5 brand new cards from their decks.
See, that is throwing away your hand. In any card game, your hand is your strategy. It's, your carefully hoarded resources, your secret weapons, your backup plans.
Right.
Why on earth would you willingly blow up your own hard work and throw away all of your options? I mean, if I'm playing a game, I'm terrified of losing that progress.
And that fear of losing progress, that's a universal human instinct. And it is exactly what makes Tommy's strategy so lethal.
Yeah.
You see your hand as a safety net.
Yeah, of course.
You see it as hard-earned progress. But Tommy sees it as a limitation. For him, Morphing Jar acts as this universal reset button. He just doesn't fear losing his current setup because he genuinely believes that true insight only comes from starting over.
So he wipes it all away.
Exactly. His internal monologue, his entire approach to hitting a roadblock is literally quoted in the source as, "That didn't work, cool, let's try something else."
Oh, wow. That's actually an incredibly freeing way to look at a problem. You just stop agonizing over a failing strategy and wipe the slate clean.
It really is.
But, okay, if Morphing Jar is the reset button, the next card in his core engine, Cyberjar, is just straight up dynamite. I mean, this one is literally a chaos generator.
Oh, absolutely.
When the Cyberjar is activated, it destroys every single monster on the board, yours and your opponent's, just a complete wipeout. Then both players reveal the top 5 cards of their decks, and they instantly summon any monsters they find right onto the empty battlefield, and they draw the rest.
Yeah. It just forces a completely new game state in the blink of an eye.
But again, I have to push back here. You are blowing up your own monsters. You are destroying whatever defenses or attacks you spent the whole game building up.
Yes, you are.
It's like spending hours building an intricate house of cards and then intentionally turning on a desk fan just to see which cards happen to land face up. It's delightfully unhinged.
It looks completely reckless from the outside, I'll give you that. But underneath, there is a brilliant underlying logic. Tommy operates on the principle that destruction leads to unexpected creation. The source puts it perfectly. Blow it up. Something better might come out of it.
Wow, so he just embraces the randomness.
Exactly. If you blow up a stagnant situation, something better might emerge from the rubble. Most people demand a sterile, predictable environment to operate in. They want to control everything.
Right, the whole accumulation mindset.
But Tommy willingly introduces catastrophic volatility into the system. And he does this for one specific reason. He inherently trusts his own ability to navigate a new, unpredictable reality much better than his opponent does.
Oh, I see. He's dragging them into the deep end of the pool because he knows he's the better swimmer in rough water.
Precisely. He weaponizes their need for control. When the board explodes, the opponent is just paralyzed, mourning the loss of their strategy. But Tommy, he's already analyzing the new variables.
That is so wild. But having a reset button is useless if you don't survive the blast yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you're constantly setting off these massive explosions, resetting hands, destroying the whole board, how do you prevent yourself from becoming collateral damage?
Well, even a chaotic system needs parameters.
Exactly. Which brings us to his tools of control. Because as you said earlier, this isn't a junkyard, it's a laboratory.
Right. Chaos without control is just a mess. Tommy uses highly specific tools to manipulate the variables of his experiments. In this specific game, many of these chaotic effects, like the jars we just talked about, only trigger when a card is physically flipped from a face-down position to a face-up position.
Right, which brings us to his first set of tools, these spell cards called the books. Specifically, the Book of Taiyu and the Book of Moon.
Yes, these are crucial.
Book of Taiyu does one very simple thing. It forces a face-down monster to flip face-up immediately. If Tommy sets a cyber jar face down, his opponent might want to wait or try to remove it carefully. But Book of Taiyu says, no, we aren't waiting. We're detonating this right now.
It forces discovery.
Exactly. He accelerates the experiment on his own timeline. The quote from the notes is, don't wait, flip it now.
It's a profoundly proactive stance. He dictates exactly when the volatility is introduced. He doesn't wait for the opponent to trigger the experiment on their terms.
And then on the other side of that coin, he has the Book of Moon, which does the exact opposite. It forces a face-up monster to flip face down. So if Taiyu is about forcing discovery, Moon is about control within the chaos.
Right, lets him pause things.
Yeah, if a card is face down, its potential is hidden again. Its effect is reset and can be triggered a second time later. I picture these two books like the tweezers and the safety goggles in a chemistry lab. You are absolutely causing a massive explosion with the jars, but you use the Book of Taiyu to dictate exactly when the explosion happens.
And the Book of Moon, to safely pack the explosives away if the environment isn't quite right.
Exactly.
And building on that lab analogy, you also need a way to clean your beakers and reuse your materials. That's where his recovery tools come in, specifically a monster card called Night Assailant.
Oh, this one is so clever.
The mechanism here is brilliant. When Night Assailant is discarded from the hand, say, by the effect of a morphing jar, its special ability triggers. It allows Tommy to reach into his graveyard, his discard pile, and rescue a flip effect monster, bring it right back to his hand.
So the ideas aren't lost when they are discarded. They're just, like, archived.
They're recycled. For Tommy, the thought process is, that variable worked before. Let's bring it back and test it again. He is meticulously curating an environment where he can repeatedly test what works.
He's running the scientific method at light speed.
Exactly. He isn't just a chaos agent. He's resetting and reusing variables constantly.
So let's actually look at the 40-card laboratory Tommy built to run these experiments, because breaking down the specific equipment reveals exactly how his mind works. The deck is divided into 20 monsters, 14 spells, and 6 traps.
Let's start with those 20 monsters.
Yeah, we have the core jar engine, which we talked about, and then what we call the flip engine. These are the cards that generate value when they are flipped face up. We have 2 copies of Magician of Faith, 2 Night Assailants, a Penguin Soldier, an Apprentice Magician, and an Old Vindictive Magician.
Now let's explain what those actually do, because they're essentially modular variables. Magician of Faith, when flipped, allows you to retrieve a spell card from your graveyard. It basically reaches into the trash and pulls out your best tool.
Always handy.
And Penguin Soldier is fascinating. When it flips, it bounces up to 2 monster cards back to their owner's hands.
And bouncing is such a psychological weapon. You aren't destroying the opponent's monster, which they might actually have ways to recover from. You are sending it back to their hand, forcing them to spend their time and their resources all over again to put it back on the board.
Right.
You're literally stealing their time.
It entirely resets their time investment. Then we move into his chaos and reset support monsters. Cards like Morphing Jar number 2, Spirit Reaper, and Sangan.
Sangan is a perfect example of his philosophy. When Sangan is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, its effect allows you to search your deck for a weak monster and add it to your hand. It's basically a search tool masked as collateral damage.
Exactly.
If Cyberjar blows up the whole board and kills Sangan in the process, Tommy actually benefits because Sangan goes and fetches the exact missing piece he needs for his next experiment.
It's all connected. He also employs utility and control monsters. Breaker the Magical Warrior is used to shatter the opponent's defensive spells. Exiled Force acts as a sort of targeted mercenary. You sacrifice it to destroy a specific problematic monster on the opponent's side.
Right.
And DD Warrior Lady doesn't just destroy an opponent's monster, she banishes it to another dimension, completely removing it from the game.
So brutal. But my absolute favorite part of his monster lineup is the combo support, specifically 2 cards, Tsukuyomi and Sinister Serpent.
Oh, Tsukuyomi is essential to this loop.
It really is. Tsukuyomi is a spirit that, when summoned, flips a monster face down, and then at the end of the turn, Tsukuyomi returns to your hand. It is a reusable switch. You can play it, flip your morphing jar face down to reset it, and Tsukuyomi bounces safely back to your hand to be used again next turn.
It's an infinite loop of resetting your own traps.
Yes. And Sinister Serpent provides what we call discard synergy. Many powerful cards in this game require you to discard a card from your hand as a cost to activate them.
Right, but Sinister Serpent breaks that rule entirely. Whenever it's thrown away into the graveyard, it magically slithers back into your hand during your next turn.
It's an infinite piece of trash. Tommy never actually pays the real cost for his destructive engines because he just keeps feeding them the same regenerative snake.
It's brilliant resource management. We also have to mention his high variance cards, which really highlight his whole personality. He runs Injection Fairy Lily, a monster that looks completely harmless but allows you to pay a massive chunk of your own life points to temporarily boost her attack to astronomical levels.
Just a chaotic, unexpected spike in power.
Exactly. And Tribe Infecting Virus, which is another board reset tool. You discard a card, probably that Sinister Serpent, declare a species of monster, and destroy every monster of that type on the board.
So when Tommy creates a mess he doesn't like, this is the bleach he uses to just wipe the counter clean.
Precisely.
Okay, moving to the 14 spell cards, we see an absolute focus on manipulation and speed. He has 2 copies of Taiyu, 2 of Moon, and then combo accelerators like Premature Burial to drag a jar back from the grave, and Snatch Steal, which literally takes control of the opponent's monster.
He also runs the classic staples: Heavy Storm, Mystical Space Typhoon, Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, and Delinquent Duo.
And with Graceful Charity, you draw 3 cards but have to discard 2, right?
Right. Which, again, he wants to do. He wants to discard Night Assailant or Sinister Serpent. He is sifting through his deck at breakneck speed.
And to protect his face-down experiments while he sets them up, he uses Scapegoat, which generates 4 little helpless sheep tokens to absorb enemy attacks, and Swords of Revealing Light, which completely freezes the opponent's ability to attack for 3 whole turns. Oh, and Card Destruction for even more full reset synergy.
Looking at these spells, they are almost entirely focused on manipulating the game state rather than building a traditional defense. He's either accelerating his own deck, stealing the opponent's resources, or freezing the opponent in place.
Which perfectly explains the most shocking part of this entire deck list, the trap cards. Out of 40 cards, he only runs 6 traps.
Just 6.
Traps are your defense. They are the walls of your fortress. Running a deck with only 6 defensive cards is like running a volatile chemistry experiment without a blast shield. He clearly isn't interested in protecting himself. He wants to feel the heat of the explosion to see exactly how it burns.
Well, defense implies that you're worried about what your opponent is doing. Tommy is solely focused on what he is doing, and even his few traps are highly aggressive or disruptive. He runs Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, Call of the Haunted, Ring of Destruction, Ceasefire.
Oh, Ceasefire is great for that flip synergy damage.
Exactly. And then there's Trap Dust Shoot.
I love how this card works. Trap Dust Shoot forces the opponent to reveal their entire hand, and then Tommy gets to choose 1 monster from it and shuffle it back into their deck.
He uses this specifically to gather information. He isn't just being nosy, he's running a calculation. He looks at their hand to see exactly what variables he's up against.
Ah, I see.
Once he confirms they don't have a way to stop him or recover, he detonates the Cyber Jar. Every single card in this 40-card machine, from the Infinite Snake to the reusable Spirit Switch, is perfectly synergistic. It's all designed to stall the opponent, gather crucial information, and perfectly set up the board for a massive chaotic reset.
Wow, so how does this actually play out in real time? Sitting across from another human being, how does this machine operate? According to the notes, it unfolds in 4 distinct phases that mirror a rogue science experiment. Phase 1 is the early game, or setting the experiment.
Right.
This is where Tommy simply places his jars and flip monsters face down on the board and protects them with his scapegoat sheep tokens or his freezing spells. This is simply setting variables.
And to the opponent, this looks completely normal. They think they're playing a standard game of accumulation. They're summoning their monsters, building their fortress, entirely unaware that the ground beneath them is literally wired with explosives.
Then we hit Phase 2, the mid-game. Start breaking things. This is the drop. Tommy flips the morphing jar to completely reset both players' hands, or he flips the cyber jar and wipes the entire board.
The game state intentionally becomes unpredictable here.
Yeah, this is the exact moment the opponent realizes the fortress they spent the last 10 minutes building is gone, and they're now floating in zero gravity.
The cognitive dissonance for the opponent here is just staggering. They're panicking over the sudden loss of their carefully laid plans. But Tommy is entirely calm. While they are mourning the past, he's already observing the new data and analyzing the present.
Which seamlessly transitions into Phase 3, the turning point. This is controlled chaos. Now Tommy starts looping his knight assailant to get his discarded cards back. He uses Tsukuyomi to flip his jars face down so he can reuse them. He uses Book of Taiyu to force his flips immediately.
He's no longer reacting to the board, he's cycling a self-sustaining system.
Exactly.
He transitions from being an observer of the experiment to the master of the laboratory. He's managing a resource loop, basically playing a completely different game, while the opponent is still hopelessly trying to play the original game of accumulation.
The opponent is just reacting to the explosions while Tommy is the one pushing the plunger over and over again. And finally, Phase 4, the end game, the emergent win. And this happens in one of three ways. The opponent either completely runs out of answers, or they get overwhelmed by the sheer number of monsters Tommy has summoned from his chaotic loops, or they get decked out, empty jar style.
Right, decking out.
Which is when you're forced to draw a card, but your deck is completely empty. It's an automatic loss. Tommy uses Morphing Jar so many times that he forces the opponent to draw their entire deck until there is nothing left.
Notice how fragmented those victory conditions are.
Exactly. That's the craziest part. Wait, decking out, overwhelming the board, just exhausting their answers. It sounds like Tommy doesn't actually have a single focused way to win the game.
He really doesn't.
Most players build a strategy to do one specific thing to achieve victory, like a sniper rifle approach. Tommy just has a weather machine.
And that lack of a focused win condition is the true genius of his system. For Tommy, winning is simply an emergent property. He doesn't actually care how he wins. He only cares that the system functions and reveals something interesting.
That is wild.
It feels accidental to the opponent, sure, but it's a statistical inevitability. He disrupts the resources so thoroughly and cycles his own tools so efficiently that eventually the system just collapses in his favor.
He doesn't aim for the finish line. He just outlearns the opponent until the finish line comes to him. It really paints a vivid picture of the psychological warfare happening at the table.
Oh, absolutely.
Sitting across from Tommy must be exhausting. The notes describe him as curious, experimental, and slightly unhinged, but brilliant. But the opponent's experience, it's just pure cognitive overload. To quote the source, they're left sitting there thinking, I don't even know what's happening anymore.
He hasn't just defeated the cards they brought to the table. He's defeated their fundamental understanding of how the game itself is supposed to be played.
It is brilliant. Tommy's strategy doesn't work just because of some clever card interactions. It works because he fundamentally replaces the fear of losing with the joy of discovery. He proves that sometimes the absolute best way to understand a complex system isn't to carefully study it from afar or to try and build a stronger wall.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to walk right up to it, hit it with a hammer, and watch how the pieces fall. His win condition feels accidental, but it's the inevitable result of outlearning the opponent.
It forces us to radically reframe how we approach the obstacles in our own lives, honestly. We are so deeply conditioned to fear mistakes and to desperately cling to our incremental progress. But Tommy's laboratory proves that sometimes meaningful progress requires a little bit of demolition.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Think about a current project or a problem in your life or a roadblock at work that feels completely stuck. You've been trying to build that safe, incremental fortress, and it is just not working.
We've all been there.
What would happen if you stopped trying to aggressively win or fix it, and instead you played a cyber jar? If you deliberately blew up the structure, let go of your safety net, and embraced a little bit of chaos, what unexpected emergent solution might reveal itself in the rubble?